Rodriguez, the Transportation and Planning Engineer for the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, and I am very excited to be part of this incredible and complex initiative. This workshop will mark a major turning point in the course of the Beyond 77 study. I am inviting you all to stay engaged. This is more than a regular meeting or a presentation, but rather an open discussion. Due to the challenges in the new normal of today's working environment, we made significant changes to this workshop. We're taking a 6-7 hour event and condensing it into a 3.5 hour event. We're also making it available today and tomorrow. We're gonna have Zoom breakout sections if needed, to break it in smaller groups. So if we have a particular conversation or something that needs to be further discussed, we can do that on the side or apart in a smaller group, and then continue with the agenda for today. We have questions to keep people engaged through menti.com. And the code for that is 236839. So again, that will be through the website, www.menti.com, and the code is 236839. Now I'm gonna go over the names that I see on my screen for the participation. I see Yuri Deller O'Keefe, Tyler Bray, Adam Howell, James Parkhill, Gene Conti, Andrew Ventresca, Brian Nadolny, Jason Wager, Julie Ailsell, Krista Gooding, Robert Cook, Stuart Basham, Warren Coxey. Is there anyone that I didn't name? Anybody else at all? Okay, next, I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Gene Conti. Mr. Conti is a former secretary of the Maryland Department of Labor and former secretary of the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Gene has more than 3 decades of public service and private businesses management experience. Currently, he's the president and co-founder of the Conti Group. His practice focuses on business development and revenue growth for clients in transportation and telecommunications, as well as training and coaching leaders in those sectors. Jim brings to the Beyond 77 study the ability to articulate how numerous factors must be considered in mobility planning. This effort involves much more than the traditional planning studies that we've done in the past. And now I'm gonna turn over to Mr. Gene Conti. Thank you.
Thanks, Augustine, and thanks to the members of the Steering and Advisory Committee that are joining us today. We'll have another session tomorrow with others. We appreciate your engagement and willingness to join us in this adventure we're on. And those of you who completed your homework assignment, we thank you for that as well. The only way we can make this worthwhile for everybody, and particularly for CARTBO and the leaders in the region, will be to continue with the engagement of subject matters, experts, elected officials, and stakeholders. We look forward to our time today to help the consultant team shape the direction moving forward and to continue identifying and honing in on the mobility issues across this corridor. I hope you've had a chance to review the story map. It's really an incredible piece of work. I've never seen anything like it before, and I think it really does an excellent job of documenting how things are changing across the region, the great work that was done by the consultant team to pull together a huge amount of information on the region and its changes and the existing conditions in the corridor and around the corridor. So we're going to focus today on developing that vision and again, clarifying these mobility issues in this area. As the main artery that runs through Charlotte north and south, The I-77 corridor between Statesville and Rock Hill provides a broad network of connections that enable people to move and mobilize through their lives on a daily basis in that region, a dynamic and changing region. The study is designed to help understand this dynamic growth and also to really try to visualize and create long-term transportation solutions to improve the commutes, the moving, the mobility that people need in the region, and that ultimately can continue to make this community and this region a place where people want to live and work and play and raise their families. We're currently wrapping up phase 2, which is the analysis section, and moving on to phase 3, to the solutions. In order to cross that bridge, we need this workshop to help us continue to define the vision and continue to identify and clarify the major mobility issues in each of the focus areas that have been identified in the story map. This will help set the foundation for developing detailed solutions and looking at detailed funding options to make those solutions real. So thanks again for your participation. We look forward to a robust discussion and participation. And moving forward, we look forward to having you help us define this vision for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. So again, we have a relatively small group this afternoon, but we want you to please stay engaged, ask questions, don't be shy. In the past, we just want to ask you to, I guess, as it's becoming a norm with Zoom meetings and online meetings and using technology nowadays, please start with your name, or at least wait 1 second before you ask your question or comment, so that way we're not overlapping. The Mentimeter, I think we have multiple numbers, but the correct number is 10478. So a little bit of confusion. I think we changed it in the last minute or so. Next, we're gonna take you to Tyler Braid or Adam Howell. They're gonna walk us through more details on the Mentimeter.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking some time out of your day. I know we're all waiting with bated breath here in North Carolina for Isaias to come. And just as an aside, I'm in Raleigh. I'm a transportation planning engineer with Atkins North America, and I'm here in Raleigh. And in case something hits us where we lose power, Adam, who's over in Charlotte, will just pick up where I left off seamlessly, and we'll continue to move forward. But again, if there's any danger of weather event, please feel free to be as safe as possible, and make sure that those things are taken care of. So again, I just want, on behalf of the entire consultant team, CRTPO and others, I want to thank you for your participation. Thank you for being engaged. For those that were able to complete the homework assignment, we very much appreciate that, and we look forward to a robust discussion today. As Augustine mentioned, this first slide, we're gonna use Mentimeter quite a few times today, so we want everybody to go ahead, take a second to open up a browser window at menti.com, and type in that code 10478, and we're going to get started with our first icebreaker of the day. And I'm going to turn it over to a colleague of mine, James Parkhill, to start that. So James, as you're ready.
All right, thanks, Tyler. Again, I'm James Parkhill, also with Atkins, and I'm in our Charlotte office. Like Tyler said, thank you guys for joining with us today. And to start us off and get our brains going, we have a couple icebreaker questions that you can interactively answer on the Mentimeter website. So our first one is, in what countries are Maglev train systems operational? And Maglev stands for magnetic levitation, which is how the trains are able to run quickly.
So it looks like, James, we have answers coming in.
Okay, oh cool. I didn't realize it came in that quickly. Nice, so it looks like a lot of China, Japan, also have Germany, France for Europe. Give a few more seconds. So looks like you guys are right on the money. The answer for Maglev is China, Japan, and South Korea. Currently, the fastest one is in Shanghai. Japan and South Korea have lower speed maglevs, but they're still considered maglevs. And there are additional ones under construction in Japan and China as well. I like the Concorde answer. I guess we can go to the next question. So the next question is another type of technology. So what is the theoretical top speed of a Hyperloop system if it was to get fully built? Let's see.
I'm trying to, sorry, one second. Taking a few minutes.
Not sure.
There we go.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
It's Julie. The next question didn't come up on mine. It's still in the first question. And I refreshed the menti.com. Oh, there it is. Okay, thanks.
Yep, it was taking me a minute to get it.
So we know it's over 500, I guess, based on the option. Give one more second. So the correct answer is 760 miles per hour. And this is the proposed top speed, could be for freight or passenger transportation. It was originally, the concept was made by Tesla and SpaceX in 2013, specifically looking at connecting Los Angeles and San Francisco. And there are currently test tracks built in California and Nevada, and a prototype is in development in Dubai. So we'll see if it's actually going to get built. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, James. Thanks. It's really exciting to see what's happening around the world, and hopefully pretty soon we'll get some of those same innovations here in the States, and more specifically in North Carolina. So we will see. Again, my name is Tyler Bray. I'm Transportation Planning Engineer with Atkins North America in our Raleigh office. I appreciate everybody taking the time out today to attend the workshop and help us to develop vision, guiding principles, goals, and take a look and discuss mobility issues in some of our focus areas along the 77 corridor. To orient everybody, we're gonna break this workshop into 2 sessions. We'll have a break here in between each one of the sessions. The first session is going to be concentrated on vision. Early last week, we provided all workshop participants with a preliminary vision document, and we'll go through that in great detail today, talking with you about your comments, your confirmations, your visions, your questions. And so after we review that, we'll talk about any stakeholder feedback that we received. And then we will dive into specific comments, questions, revisions, or confirmations. And then hopefully at the end, we will be able to pull together a draft vision with guiding principles and goals that the consultant team, along with CRTPO and our partners with RFATS, will bring together to develop a final vision, guiding principles, and goals for the project. And one of the questions that you may be asking is, why are we doing and developing a vision at this point in the study process? Well, it was very important to us that we needed to do a robust review of everything that's been done prior to this study, all the planning, whether it's transportation or whether it's land use, among the varying size communities along the corridor, whether they be urban, rural, suburban, metropolitan in nature. They all have their own views about their systems. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a very good understanding of that. And so that we could take that knowledge, learn from the people that live along the corridor to understand what they may see as the ultimate vision or the ultimate goals that they want to address, or what guides them. So we wanted to have a better understanding of that, and then we could work together with our stakeholders, our elected officials, and the public to help develop this vision, guiding principles, and goals. So that's where we are today, and this is the overall preliminary vision statement with the guiding and principles and goals. And we'll break this down specifically and to each one of the areas, and then we will allow everybody the opportunity to discuss each one, their comments, whether they think it's a perfect vision statement as written, or the goals are what we want to achieve with the study, or does there need to be some specific revision? So before I get started, are there any questions about the process that we'll go through this afternoon as it regards the vision, guiding principles, and goals? Okay. Again, thank you, everybody. So I thought it was just important. Some of us are visual, some of us are audio learners, just to kind of read the vision statement, and then we can have some reaction to it. So preliminary vision statement is the Beyond 77 Corridor Study will be a strategic, innovative, equitable, and comprehensive roadmap guiding the decision-making process for planning, financing, and implementing effective strategies, policies, and programs to strengthen the transportation system for a cooperative future. So that's it. I wanted to give an opportunity to anybody from the consultant team or CRTPO or RFATS to provide any context to that vision statement, if they so choose. All right,
Hey,
hearing
Tyler.
from, sure. Yes, Adam.
This is Adam Howell, by the way. I'm the project manager over the consultant team for this project, and um, we went through quite a bit of dialogue to work with CRTPO on developing this. And while we did our due diligence to try to make sure that we provided an effective and adequate statement to shape how we go about the next 14 months of this study, we recognize that nothing is perfect, and we certainly would love to hear the feedback. We tried to capture all the buzzwords possible so that we could create what we think is an appropriate statement to build on for the success and the solutions that need to be coming in here. But CRTPO and the consultants, we think, can only do so much, and we need to hear, especially from those that live and work here. Granted, I live and work here, but I haven't been here that long. So would love to hear, please break the ice, break the silence. And if you think it's awesome, then shout it out. But if you have critiques or anything like that, we would love to hear that as well.
This is Brian Adonley. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I was following this, and I feel it's kind of very comprehensive and gets to everything. But I'm wondering at the very end when it talks about how, it basically talks about the strategy we're going to do and how we're going to implement everything it says to strengthen the transportation system. And I just feel like, is this project very corridor specific? I know it's a wide corridor, but it just the transportation system, like it almost feels like for the whole region. There's nothing besides the name in the beginning that mentions that this is what the geography is for this. That it's corridor based as opposed to regional based. I think
That's really good feedback, actually.
I can answer that, or I can help. This is
Yeah.
Yes, Brian. I think that's a good comment, and actually it is the transportation system as a whole, because we are evaluating transit as well as bike, pedestrian. So it's not just a factor of evaluating the roads and the one mode of roadway, but also the other modes as well, and as well as freight.
Mm-hmm.
So
right. So
in this vision statement, it's always been we put it all together as an official statement. It's always been a part of the Beyond 77 from way back. I would say 2 or 3 years ago, when this was part of a much bigger vision for the region.
yeah. I do understand that when you say the transportation system, you're kind of talking about all the different modes. So it wouldn't have been like replacing that piece. It would just been more like to strengthen the transportation system for the cooperative future of the corridor, or of the I-77 corridor. Like, to me, it's at the very end, like kind of whether we need to be any more specific to the project versus the way it's kind of is very broad based. But that was my only comment.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So to make it where it's clear that it is the 77 corridor area.
Yeah.
I think that's good feedback. I think that there's some areas for specificity that can be included in there somehow, and then we can work to incorporate that. I think that is a completely valid piece of feedback, Brian. And you're right. It's still ambiguous to the layperson who, if they don't look at a map, what does the Beyond 77 corridor study mean to them? Because for most people, they're still going to think the highway, which is, we know, is not our intent to focus on the highway. So.
Yes, Adam, this is Tyler Bray. Just to food for thought, when you're looking at the last part of this vision statement, and it says to strengthen the transportation system for a cooperative future. obviously we understand that the transportation system continues beyond the borders and the study area specified for this corridor study, and everything is connected. All of these municipalities are connected in one way or another. I doubt for most that they live in one municipality but don't ever venture into the other ones, and so there's always that connection where it's land use or transportation. But how we equate and how we develop strategies and solutions, I think the idea was that it would, what we do as part of this study or propose as part of this study can have the effect to strengthen the entire transportation system of the region. It may make sense within the vision statement to be specific, but that the solutions and strategies that we present and we develop will have a far-reaching impact across this region and beyond state lines, and impact up and down the East Coast potentially. So that's kind of the thought, but I think providing more specifics may be beneficial.
Adam and Tyler, this is Bob Cook.
Mhm.
With the conversation that we've had, I'm looking at this in a different light, and I'm wondering if a member of the general public saw this, somebody who's not involved with what all of us on this call today do, would they get the feeling from this, the way it's worded, that this is about the transportation system? I see it; it's there in print in the last line. Do they understand what we mean by transportation system? We know it, but I'm not sure if a member of the general public would, when they see that term transportation system, know that we're talking about truly a multimodal system. Or does that emphasis need to be earlier in the statement, just to get it out there at the beginning as opposed to the tail end? So I'd be interested in hearing comments on that, about how the general public might interpret that phrase transportation system, and whether or not it needs to be there in the statement closer to the beginning of it.
So I hear two things on the. Oh, sorry, somebody else is about to jump in.
It was me. You go right ahead, Adam.
So for right now, what I hear just two things really is some geographic specificity combined with being incredibly straight up front with the general public citizen about what it is that we are looking to impact versus how we're going to do it through what methods and processes. And so I think, Bob, that you're right. I think it can be powerful to shift up the concept of what we're talking about the transportation system to be, and then taking Tyler's concept of understanding that what we are going to be evaluating within the confines of our study area boundaries do have or could have the potential to have a larger regional impact. And so would it make sense to shift the latter, I guess that last line of what we see on the screen there, to be the Beyond 7, and I'm just spitballing here, the Beyond 77 corridor study will evaluate and will evaluate the regional transportation network and involve everything that comes after that. I'm just trying, because I do also want to recognize that, as Tyler mentioned, is that the end goal is we do want to be able to get to a draft vision statement at the end of the 3 hours we're together. And so as this is a great working dialogue, it'd be amazing if we had a whiteboard. If there was a digital whiteboard, we'd do this. But is that kind of fall in line a little bit with Brian and Bob, what you're suggesting so far, and then kind of matching with what Tyler suggested? If we shift it up some of that text and then changing the order. Tyler, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Adam. I like what you were saying. One of the things that is I'm just reading it and rereading it in my head. I was thinking something along the lines: the Beyond 77 corridor study will strengthen the multimodal system through a strategic, innovative, equitable, and comprehensive. I'm going to strike through roadmap and call it blueprint, guiding the decision-making process for planning, financing, and implementing effective strategies and policies and programs um, for a cooperative future of the region, or for a cooperative future of however you want to frame that last part. But I think doing what Bob says, I think one of the things that we've heard, and we'll get to later about some of the issues in some of these focus areas, is we've seen a strong support for multimodal and different types of modes, and making it abundantly clear that that's really one of the big things that are probably going to come out of this, and that's really a vision for the areas adjacent to the Interstate 77. So I think identifying those things and making them very specific in this vision statement would be helpful. So, Bob, did you have something that you maybe thought that was a good direction for us to go in, or something else entirely?
No, I like that a lot, Tyler. I thought that was well said.
Hopefully, James wrote that down for me.
Being recorded. And also Judy Dellert O'Keefe is also, along with Augustine, in case somebody is talking and you have an idea, light bulb goes off in your head, please feel free to put it in the chat box as well. But I think, James, I believe you probably captured what Tyler was getting at. So once you finalize that draft, maybe you can pop that in the chat box, and we can kind of see and read through it, and maybe we'll come back to it. But does anybody else have any other ideas while James is finalizing that with us?
Adam, I'll just add something while everyone is thinking. At the end of each of these sessions, Adam will provide a recap of everything that we talked about and that's been discussed. So there will be that opportunity to go through it as people think about things, or we'll talk about something and it will generate a thought in your head. We'll have that additional opportunity at the end once we recap each one of these, especially when you get into the 12 focus areas. I'm not expecting everybody to remember what was said at the first one, so we'll get through that at the end. So there will be that next opportunity, and of course everything that comes from today and tomorrow's work will be draft, and so we'll have that final opportunity for review. The one thing I will add, Adam mentioned it at the beginning, I believe, that we did throw about every buzzword into the vision statement that we could. If it feels, Bob mentioned its impact, or as someone from the public would review it, if it seems that we overcomplicated it, and it could be simplified, I'm certainly open to that. It's just hard to know really what to pull out, because it all seems relevant to me. But I'm always open for additional perspectives on that, because we can sometimes kind of get lost in the words. So feel free to provide those comments so we can open up this final part for anybody to have any final confirmations, revisions, or comments on the vision.
I put in this is James. I put in what I recorded, Tyler, but may have missed a word here or there.
Okay.
And feel free to edit everyone else.
As I'm reading that, I think the words after system is as. I think I was thinking about using the word through. And then reading it, it may not make sense with the word blueprint, but we can again, to massage the words, but I think the important thing to pull away from that was to move up the strengthen the system as part of that vision statement.
And I think also I think what I heard earlier too, coming from Brian, is shifting up the word region to be earlier on. So while we know, again, what our geographic constraints are to the general public citizen, they may not be looking at our website. I don't know how they come across this statement without going to our website, but they should walk away with the understanding that our work will be directly tied to our study area, but then also could be further reaching than that. So Bob and Brian or others, as a part of the committees or other CRTPO team members, thoughts on what James has posted there, of course, with shifting up the word region and changing a little bit of the context there. Is that a better direction?
This is Brian. I'm fine with it.
This is Bob. Yeah, I like it. I think it's good.
Okay. All right. Well, so to the CRTPO team, we'll definitely shift that word region up and we'll figure out how to wordsmith that in perfectly. And of course, like we said, we're coming together as an entire group, and we will combine feedback from today to tomorrow to come up with that finalized quote unquote draft for CRTPO to basically bless and finalize for us as we move forward into the next steps of our project. So Tyler, go ahead.
You got him. And thanks everybody for that discussion. That's great. So now we want to just take a minute and familiarize ourselves with some of the guiding principles and kind of talk through those. So we work to develop 5 guiding principles, and the first 3 are on the screen, and I'll read them and then we can react to each one. So the first was to provide a range of local and regional mobility choices that are safe and equitable. The second was to respect the natural and built environment. And the third was to strengthen the economic prosperity and resiliency of the region. I think these are in line with the region as a whole, all the way from Rock Hill to Statesville. And that one of the important things here is to make sure that as we're looking, or as we're evaluating this area, that we make sure that everybody's given an opportunity to thrive, either economically given an opportunity to use the transportation, that we're not putting in inadvertent restrictions to access any of the modes, any of the possibilities throughout this region, and that we make sure, in a nutshell, that it's equitable. And I think that these first 3 guiding principles will lead us in that direction. While with everything that we do, that we want to make sure that we're respecting the natural and built environment. Sometimes that we can feel that we are doing the right thing and not fully see the impacts that that could have on the system. So we want to make sure that we are considering all of that as we work through this process. So with that, I'll open the floor to any questions, comments, revisions, confirmations on any of the 3 guiding principles that we see on the screen.
Just want to say welcome to Ken Robertson with Idaho County. He just joined us some minutes ago.
Tyler, this is Jason Wager with Central Lina. Can you talk a bit more about what respecting the built environment entails or looks like? I realize these principles are not meant to be extensive, long sentences, but just wanted to hear some thoughts on that.
Sure, Jason, and it's good to hear from you. And I'll absolutely do that, and I'll also allow others to chime in because we may have a little bit different thoughts on what exactly that means to each of us. And so, if we need to better define the guiding principles, we certainly can. For me, I like the way it's written because what it does for me is it doesn't specify we're not going to ever disturb the natural environment, or we're not going to ever disturb buildings or right of way or something of that nature. But we do need to be respectful when it comes to those areas. So, for instance, we talked about a maglev train. Let's just say that the maglev might provide a solution to get people from Statesville to uptown Charlotte in a handful of minutes. But in order to do that, we bankrupt the entire region because it costs so much to build, and we take out thousands of homes and way too many impacts to wetlands. So we solve one issue where we really create a handful of problems on the other end. And so we want to make sure that whatever we're doing respects the current built and natural environment, and that we don't adversely or heavily or negatively affect that. So that's kind of what it means to me, but I'll open the floor for anybody else to on the team to possibly respond to that.
Hey, Tyler, this is Bob Cook. I just wanted to add a little bit to that. One of the things that I like about having that in there kind of reflects on one of the frustrations that I have experienced a lot is sometimes when we talk as transportation planners about preparing environmental documents and so forth, there seems to be from some folks in the public that all we're focused on is plant species or certain endangered animals. And there was the Carolina heel splitter issue in this region with the Monroe bypass for quite a long time. And but the truth of the matter is through those environmental planning efforts, they always look at the built environment where people live, neighborhoods, community institutions like churches, and making sure that those institutions aren't unnecessarily disrupted and so on. So I think it's good to get that out there so people understand that it's more than just looking at things like the Carolina heel splitter. Important, not to diminish the importance of looking at that, but it's far more extensive than just that. So that's one of the reasons why I like.
Thank you, Bob. And where I live, it's the dwarf wedge mussel.
They're probably related.
Adam or Augustine, did you want to respond to Jason's statement?
I think Bob summed it up very nicely, actually, and wouldn't add anything else to it.
I'm good too.
All right. Any other comments on that specific guiding principle or the other two? All right, great, and appreciate that, Jason. The other thing I wanted to bring up with this is this workshop does not end any of the possibilities for revisions or comments. If you have any after the workshop, please feel free to send them along to the team. We'll be happy to look at those and discuss with you offline if needed. So the next two guiding principles are shown here on the screen. I'll read them real quickly. Improve integration of the transportation system with adopted land use policies. And the last is to incorporate innovative improvements into the existing system. And so these are our final ones. I want to expand on the last guiding principle a little bit. Innovative improvements into the existing system could include on the ground improvements. It could also include innovative solutions when it comes to financing or programming or policy related. So that covers all of those types of innovative solutions, not just roadway or e-scooters or Hyperloop or something else. So it incorporates all of those. So I'll open it up to anybody with any questions, comments, or revisions for these two guiding principles. All right. It looks like we did our due diligence and did a pretty good job with developing these. Again, if anyone has any sort of comments or anything that they'd like to relay to the team, please feel free to do that at the end of our time or in the next coming days, and we'll work together to incorporate and address those as they come in. This is great. I appreciate that. So the last part of our first session, we had developed as a team 6 goals that we wanted to achieve as part of this study. So I'm going to read through 2 at a time on each slide, and then we'll discuss as needed. So the first is to supply safe and equitable mobility opportunities for people and businesses to efficiently access jobs, essential goods, services, activity centers, and distribution hubs. We think that this is definitely very important goal as we look at the current situation and how we adapt to our system as we move forward, and what's happening in our world, the disruption of supply chains and other issues. So the second goal in this line is to provide transportation corridor improvement strategies that enhance safety for all users, respond to resiliency issues such as weather events or security emergencies, and adapt effectively to ongoing climate change. Obviously, this is very important and on most people's minds right now. So we thought that it was very important for us to make sure, as one of my first bosses told me, the #1 goal of anything is safety. So we want to make sure that that's on front and part of our goals. So be happy to take any revisions, any comments, any confirmations on these goals from the participants today.
Hey, Tyler, this is Gene. I'm not sure I understand why distribution hubs is in that. The goal of supplying safe and equitable mobility opportunities. I can understand accessing jobs, essential goods, services, activity centers, but distribution hubs. What is the distribution hub that people need to get to?
That's a good point, Gene. On the next slide, we do have a goal that talks a little bit more about freight, and
Yeah.
it might make sense to move that portion of that over into that goal. So let's revisit that when we see that next goal. But that actually does. I do think that might be worth considering moving it over. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Stuart Baxter
This,
with the European office, and for these types of mission statements, one of the things we see routinely is a reference to movement of goods and freight throughout the region. So maybe that's a good replacement for the distribution hub.
Yeah, Stuart, let's we do have a goal in the next slide, and I think that we can move some of the language over there, and it will meet exactly what you and Gene are talking about.
Okay, sure.
this is Julie Isold. I have a question on whether you considered including places of education in, access to, in addition to jobs, essential goods and services, activity centers, and places of education. In particular, I'm thinking of community colleges, because, as the different community colleges share curriculum or anyway, that's just what was on my mind. And even for high school students that are trying to go to community colleges or other, I don't know, and if we have vocational schools, that kind of thing, giving them access to mobility, I think would be helpful too.
Sure, that's a great comment. I would ask Bob or Augustine for a clarification on the definition of activity centers in the region. Does that include, for the way that you guys would define that, does that include educational centers, or would it make sense to pull that out as another element in this goal?
Tyler, this is Bob. I'm going to defer actually to, and I apologize for putting him on the spot, but I'm going to defer to Jason Wager from Centralina about this. Because Jason, I think we picked that activity center up from the Connect study, the original Connect study. Do you recall if there was a educational component to that?
Sorry, Bob. Yeah, this is Jason. I'm gonna have to dig into that a little bit further. Let me see if I can hear the question one more time and then get back to you.
It was whether or not activity center, as that came, the term as it came out of the Connect process, included within it educational facilities, colleges, universities, technical schools too.
Yeah, let me check on that and get back to you.
Okay, good. I did put you on the spot too, so I apologize. And Tyler, I think we could include it in there. I think it would be good to know what Jason finds out. But I like that idea. I think those institutions like that are going to become, they're important now. I think they're only going to get more important as our economy changes and evolves in this region.
Sure.
This is Adam. May
Go
I
ahead,
also
Adam.
may I also suggest, and Julie, I would love to hear your feedback on this as an amendment to what we're discussing, is possibly highlighting educational and cultural institutions, to not necessarily, I didn't want to ignore any aspect of religion or other cultural aspects of the region.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just, the cultural institutions generally are in activity centers, but I'm thinking of, and I don't know, like if Kannapolis, Rowan County would consider where their community college is an activity center. Maybe it will be one day, but I'm just thinking, that we really are emphasizing how important it is that people can have access to good education as being one of the goals.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for that. Those are very good, very good topics for discussion and clarification on these. And so we'll look at pulling out education, understanding a little bit better the definition maybe of activity centers that was established during the Connect study, and seeing how we can better define that goal. Are there any other comments on that goal, or the second one on this page for safety and resiliency issues? All right. Or Jean, did you have something that you wanted to add?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Your name just popped up on my screen, so I wanted to make sure I didn't cut you off. So the next two goals that the team had established are to consider technology applications in all transportation strategy decisions, including enhanced techniques for transportation management coordination, and to maximize transportation opportunities to enhance freight and connectivity, improving the movement of goods. So going to back to Jean and Stuart's comments, this is where we had a goal specifically focused on freight connectivity. So is there a recommended adjustment to the language or the way it's written here to maybe cover a few more things?
Yeah, I think you could maybe add something at the end of that freight piece, improving the movement of goods and efficient access to distribution centers or something like that. Because I think that is an important, if you don't have efficiency in the transfer of goods at these freight depots and other places, you can really create a lot of mobility issues beyond the freight users themselves. So I think some reference to distribution hubs or major freight.
So maybe something maximize transportation opportunities to enhance freight connectivity by improving the movement of goods and efficient access to distribution hubs.
Yeah, something like that. I think that was
something like that to start, and then we can
Yeah.
massage the language a little bit. Any other comments or considerations on either one of these goals?
one of the things, I don't know if we have another goal that this might apply to, but on the technology goal, it's also traveler information, giving people information that they can use to make good mobility decisions at the right time. And technology today enables you to do that a lot easier and better than might have before. We need to continue to push on that.
Sure.
So it's not just enhanced techniques for transportation management. I'm thinking about people sitting in the TMCs that are watching all the traffic and, making decisions that might help, but how do you communicate that to the traveling public and to the truck drivers and so on that are moving? And there's a lot of technology that's available today that wasn't available 10 years ago. And hopefully 10 years
Sure.
from now, there'll be more.
Sure. So I'm thinking back to one of his earlier statements about the public and how they might perceive this. And now that I'm reading this, I think that we could change a little bit of the language at the end to make it a little bit more simple and more applicable for the public. Something along the lines of including enhanced techniques. I don't like this, but to make better mobility decisions, or maybe something of that nature, which encompasses transportation management coordination and a whole host of other opportunities, but something of that nature that might make it better applied as a goal.
Yeah, how about including enhanced techniques to assist the public in mobility decisions?
I like that. Making it a specific goal dedicated to the public, and public can include anybody who's using the transportation system, of course.
Right.
Thank you, Gene. Are there any other comments, revisions, or questions about either one of these goals? All right. Our last two goals, preliminary goals for this project, are integrate walking, bicycling, and transit options with motor vehicles by providing transportation improvement strategies that serve the public with equitable mobility choices. So going back to your earlier comment, Gene, this is where we again call out the public directly. And then the last goal, ensure recommended transportation policies and programs are sensitive to significant features of the build and natural environments, improve quality of life for residents, and promote healthy living. So those are the final two goals. Are there any comments on either one of these?
I think you should scratch the D on build and put a T in there.
Absolutely.
Tyler, was that your a way of making sure people actually read this stuff?
Yes, absolutely.
You succeeded.
Exactly right. I went through, I noticed that mistake, and I left it in.
It's working.
I want, as I'm looking at this in the first goal here, where we talk about integrate walking, bicycling, and transit options, I want to ensure with that we are not and I don't know the right word. We're not limiting ourselves here. One of the other things that I'm thinking about now that I'm reading this is our ADA issues, and do we want to specifically call that out, and make sure that anything that we do and anything that we promote or put together is in line with those requirements here. And in addition, is there anything that we're missing? I mean, pedestrian, bicycling, transit are the major ones. Is it better to say multimodal, or does it make better sense to specifically call those different types of modes out?
Is there a way to, I guess the integrate walking, biking, bicycling, transit options with other motor vehicles by providing transportation improvement strategies. That doesn't, I'm not sure I understand how much of a priority it is, if that makes sense, or are motor vehicles still the priority? Because I think that's, certainly what we see in town is that there's a struggle over that public space, that some people feel, we should give up car space for bike and pedestrian space, and cars don't agree with that. So there's that, there's that push and pull right now going on in town. And I wonder, when we talk about a bigger region or 77, does that really say that we truly value integrating other forms of mobility? Does that make sense? Or am I the only one
No,
looking at
Julie,
it that way?
This is Bob Cook. I'm seeing what you're saying. It does tend to put motor vehicles first because we want to integrate those others with that, and that puts that as establishes that as the primary mode. So could it be integrate walking, bicycling, transit, and motor vehicles? Something like that, perhaps. So there's an integration of all of them as part of the system.
Or integrate walking, biking, transit as additional strategies for mobility in addition to motor vehicles. So, in other words, we're starting to recognize that there are other forms of mobility besides cars, and that we've got to integrate those to the extent that we can, which is tough to do, especially on, in this particular instance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm just throwing that out in the universe and see where it lands.
Hey, this is Ken Robertson over at Iredell County. I'm going to tell you, when you say I-77 corridor mobility, and then you start talking about bike paths and walking and bicycles, what people who live at exit 30 or 33 and they work in downtown Charlotte or near Charlotte, I'll be honest with you, they're not real thrilled about a conversation that our solution to their congestion problems is for them to walk to work or to ride a bicycle 20 miles to go to work. So I'll tell you, maybe in downtown Charlotte, that sounds like a good idea, but when you get out to where folks are having some real issues, I mean, most people drive to go get groceries. They don't ride their bike, they don't walk, at least in our area. So all of these things, to be honest with you, turn out to be stuff that we have to explain why we spend as much as we do on some of this other stuff that most people don't use except in a recreational mode. Most of the bicyclists aren't riding their bicycles to work. They're doing it as recreation. And what I hear more about is that ought to be under the recreation budget, not under transportation budget. And I worked in Europe, and I can tell you that in Europe, a lot of people do ride their bicycle to work. It's also not 93 degrees where they do that, okay?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point for this for this particular study is what are we really trying to accomplish by having that goal as a goal? And does that, was that Kent? To your point, that's the real question. Is that a goal? Is that truly one of the goals?
Well, this is Brian Nadolny, and we're looking at a BRT solution in the north corridor and where people could access transit and move about the corridor. But one of the solutions is once you get to the station, the actual mobility hub, that you'd have options. So perhaps people, if there's a better walking trails and safe ways to bike there, you're only biking or walking a half a mile or biking a mile, and that's part of your solution. So we're kind of looking at all the mobility choices as part of the transit solutions. We're not expecting people to bike many miles, but you can transfer to other modes at that point, and potentially including I'm also thinking, the fact that we have the +3 HOT lanes at this point. We can, you can potentially form carpools by either meeting up in parking lots by car, bike, or walking as well.
This is
Thank you.
Adam
Those
with
are
the consultant
go
team.
ahead.
Some of you are asking some of the same questions that we have certainly been challenged with, and we will continue to be challenged with. And you'll see on some of the maps that we get to, and that you've probably seen through the homework that we sent out, is because of the diversity of this region, is how do you create goals and strategies through one project that can be scaled and blanketed across such a diverse group of communities. And so I think it's a great challenge to have, to be honest with you. And so trying to scale it appropriately with the right language and the right choices is what we're aiming to do. So I certainly don't want to leave it hanging. I think potentially taking the word with, as suggested by Bob, potentially, and taking it and putting the word and in there is one solution that I heard. But I kind of wanted to go back to Julie and Ken and Brian to see if you had other ideas as to how to maybe tweak that statement to match that notion of the diversity that we're dealing with in terms of geography and community type.
I don't know. I mean, maybe if you throw in the word diverse transportation improvement strategies, that speaks to, the diverse needs along the corridor. I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is Andrew. I don't know. I kind of think the land use is going to have a big determination on the diversity that we're talking about.
Yeah, and this is Brian. I'm just I'm reading this goal, and it's really getting specific on the other options, and maybe it's focusing too much on those options, because we are talking 77, and the vast majority of people utilizing that are in vehicles. So I'm just wondering if we kind of cover vehicular mobility and movements in another goal, the way we're kind of emphasizing these other options, or if we should include that in this one, so it doesn't look like we're just focusing on alternative options as opposed to the main option that incorporates I-77.
This is Bob Cook. One thing to comment on what Ken Robertson said, maybe in some way in these goals, we have to make it clear to folks, or just do a better job just across the board with this project, to make it clear to everybody that when we're talking about mobility in the I-77 corridor, we're not just talking about I-77, but just that movement across I-77. And this is where it kind of gets personal for me, where I live and where I go to get take the bus into work. it would be nice if I had an option other than driving to make that very short trip as the crow flies, maybe 3/4 of a mile or thereabouts. It would be great if I had options to get from one side to the other, or from one side where I live to a supermarket on the other, right on the other side. Again, maybe 3/4 of a mile to a mile away, and for some trips or to the supermarket, or for my in the way I live, that is that can be accomplished by walking, if those facilities were present, or by riding a bike if those facilities were present today. So again, Adam and Augustine and Tyler, I'm not sure if we can get that into a goal exactly, but I think it does sound to me that we might just need to do a little bit better job noting that this is not just about travel on 77, but crossing I-77 too, if you will.
I think there might be an opportunity, Bob, and I'd like to either get your feedback, and maybe from others too on this call too, is about maybe, I know that we're on the goals, but maybe backing it up to the vision statement itself, because when we're talking about we had discussed the notion of inserting some geographic specificity, and the mindset of recognizing that a vision statement could then be applied to everything that falls below it, that being the goals and the principles, so that if maybe we could incorporate some generally specific statement that recognizes what you just stated, and then allow that to be trickled, or assumed to be trickled down. I don't know if that would be acceptable or not, if we can do it.
If we had to put it anywhere, if we could put it anywhere, I think it would be in the vision statement. It would be challenging, like I said, to put it in the goals. So I think the least challenging spot to put it would be the vision statement. Even there, it's not going to be easy.
No. Okay.
But I think beyond that, we need to make sure that as we're talking about this in whatever venue it might be, that we're always reminding folks that it is beyond 77. It's not just about the corridor. So the freeway, I should say. I'm sorry, it's not just about the freeway.
Yeah, I think for me, two things about this specific goal. One is, I don't know how many people are familiar with complete streets and the complete streets policy with NCDOT. In a nutshell, trying to incorporate all of these options with any sort of transportation project. So that was some of the thought behind it. The other one is understanding that not everybody has the ability to own a car, or the ability to be able to drive, or even want to drive. And so we need to be cognizant in the, especially in the areas off of the interstate, in the adjacent communities, and considering the ability to provide them multimodal options to get where they need to go. So those are two of the things that we were thinking about. But I think that we can talk internally, continue the discussion, and come up with a more unifying goal here to make it work for the corridor.
And we do have the feedback that we'll receive from the folks who participate tomorrow too.
Absolutely, it's a good point, Bob. Are there any other comments on these last two goals? All right, well, I want to thank everybody for the robust discussion on the vision, guiding principles, and goals. I really, really, really appreciate it. And just so that we kind of orient ourselves before our first break, I want to turn it over to Adam Howell just to kind of recap the discussion that we've had through the vision, guiding principles, and goals. And then we'll take a 10-minute break before we begin the second session. So Adam, I'll turn it to you.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely, it's been a great conversation. We have had some good dialogue, and so thank you for just having that good back and forth. just going back to the vision statement, we're going to, James put the latest and greatest of what we had originally discussed to be the draft vision statement based on our dialogue in the chat box. If you just scroll up a little bit, you'll be able to see what that turned into. And of course, we will combine that in with the feedback that we receive from tomorrow. We will relay what the vision statement has turned into from today to tomorrow's group so they see where the conversation went. And then they can kind of build onto it, or they can put a thumbs up and say, that sounds good. The group from Monday gets an A+ for the day. And then moving into the guiding principles, it felt as though we were pretty much on target with those. And so we will keep those intact to move forward. The goals, however, I think that we can do some more clarifications and more some specificity components built within. Julie, we are certainly going to work to focus on and how to build in educational institutions and maybe a separate call out instead of them being lumped in with activity centers. And we'll wait to hear from Jason Wager on that. I know that Bob Cook called you out on that one, but we'll see how that relates from the Connect study that you guys put on through the COG a few years ago. And then we'll, of course, look into how to edit and incorporate more effective distribution hubs, language into the freight goals. And then we'll also look into how we can better provide a more specific notion of what the regional network looks like in terms of the diversity of our communities combined through this study, linked with what the regional transportation network should be in terms of its diversity or the diverse components that come with that. And so how to make it known that what works in Uptown Charlotte may not necessarily be the same thing that would work in the town of Troutman, per se. And so those are just two examples that I pulled out, but we'll certainly work to make that happen. So I believe that those were the main points. James Parkhill has been working closely with Tyler and I to take some more detailed notes in that recap, and we will make sure that we make the specific changes that were discussed as also as relay this information to the next group tomorrow. Did I miss anything, though, that was of key point that I needed to make sure that we had captured before we do move on to our break?
Adam, this is Tyler.
Well,
I just have a clear. Oh, go ahead.
Yes,
I was just going to say, once the Troutman Outer Beltway is completed, they will have more in common with Charlotte. So maybe that was a bit premature.
No, you're right. What year is that coming? Is that 2060? Is that Bob? Is that right?
That's no. I think the groundbreaking is tomorrow.
2178. 2178.
I thought groundbreaking was this week. But
oh. You guys found some new money up there. You better let me know where it is.
Yeah.
Well,
Adam, this is Tyler.
Ahead, Tyler. Yes.
For tomorrow, are you planning for us to present either a different vision, different goals, or different guiding principles to the workshop participants tomorrow, or would we show them the same things that we showed today?
We'll show the same things that we showed today, but then after we highlight the text that's on the screen, we'll also bring up some of the feedback that we've heard in some brief notes from today's discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Just so that everybody's on the same page.
This is Agustin. So it's almost 5 o'clock. We're gonna take a quick break, 10-minute break, and I'll turn it over in a moment to Tyler or Adam. Just wanna make sure that if you cannot join us in 10 minutes from now or 5:10, we're gonna resume this conversation, this exact conversation tomorrow morning around 10 o'clock in the morning. So that's in case that you have to disconnect, you have to leave right now. Again, the agenda for tomorrow will be the same as today, starting at 8:30. Then roughly by 10 o'clock, we will resume this conversation, or 10 in the morning. We will resume the same conversation that we're gonna do in about 10 minutes.
All right, thank you, Augustine. So you see the slide on the screen is a break for 10 minutes. So go ahead and just reconvene at 5:10, and then we'll get started with additional icebreakers and discussion on mobility issues. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Okay, not having that in the recording. There it is.
Give everyone a few more
Thank you,
seconds to
Yuri.
answer.
So it wasn't recorded that Adam responded by saying, "Father knows best," right?
That's right. That's right.
All right, James, I think we can go ahead.
Alrighty. So the correct answer is there were over 50,000 trips just in March. And then in April, there were none because they were all taken off the road. They were banned. And the data I was looking at is that the number of trips have been climbing back. Last month in June, there were about 32,000 trips. So people are still using them, I guess.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, James.
Thank
Appreciate
you very
that.
much.
So for this second session, we will be diving into mobility issues. We'll review the focus areas of congestion in a second and where those are. We'll talk about the results from the homework for each one of the focus areas along with their mobility issues. We'll ask for comments, questions, revisions on the issues as they were identified. And then we'll end the product with a draft list of identified mobility issues in each focus area, really understanding what are the primary issues that need to be addressed in each one of those focus areas. So to orient everybody, a week ago, we sent home a homework assignment, which listed out the 12 focus areas of congestion that have been identified through existing and future analysis in the corridor study area, looking at land use and travel time index information to identify those 12 different areas. Then the team came up with 7 different mobility issues that could be identified in each one of those focus areas. And then we sent each of the workshop participants a matrix and just asked a very simple question. Does this mobility issue really exist in this focus area? And there were 7 that were identified, and it was a yes or no question. And then we asked for some specific information. If you said that there was a safety issue, particularly where or why did you say that, if you wanted to provide additional information. So we'll go through these for each one of the focus areas, and then we'll hopefully get to an end product. And along the way, one of the things that we're going to ask is we're going to ask a question for each one of these focus areas. And we've already asked you to identify which one of the mobility issues of the 7 are present. What we're going to ask this time is which of those 7 is the top mobility issue in that area. So as we go through it, we'll explain that in a little bit more detail. So just to reorient everyone and remind everyone what the areas that were identified of congestion are. The first, starting at the northern end of the study area, is I-40. The second area is around NC 150. The third area is around the connection, the northern connection with Interstate 485. Then area number 4 is the Asbury Chapel Road and Eastfield Road area. Then in the middle section.
Tyler,
oh, yes.
Tyler, can you go back a slide really quick? I just wanted to point out and just make sure everybody was aware. The notes were very much in the story map component. The I-40 focus area is, while we have it highlighted on our maps, and we will be certainly looking at certain components of it, it is more of a secondary focus area because of some of the data that kind of goes in. So while I'm not at all degrading it as an opportunity space to discuss today, it is that we are going to recommend some further evaluation beyond this, beyond actually, in subsequent studies. So just FYI.
Sure. Thank you, Adam. And one thing also that I just wanted to mention, the team has identified these specific areas, focus areas of congestion, but that does not mean at all that the entire study area will be evaluated as part of this. So we'll be looking throughout this buffer zone that you see. So in the metro section, we have four additional areas. Area number 5 is the I-85, so 77 and I-85 area. Area number 6 is Uptown Charlotte. Area number 7 is really centered around the US 74 I-277 area. Area number 8 is the South Boulevard and Park Road area. And then looking into the south section, area number 9 is NC 160 and NC 49. Area number 10 of the congestion areas of focus is the North Carolina, South Carolina state line, and then 77 and the connections around that at the state line. Area number 11 is the US 21 Fort Mill Southern Bypass area. And then the last area is area number 12, which is South Carolina 161 and 122 area right there around Rock Hill. So those are the 12 focus areas of congestion that we asked the workshop participants to take a look at. So those are across the top in that mobility matrix. But along the left-hand side, we had the mobility issues. And so there were 7 that were listed as possibly existing in the focus areas of congestion. And they are safety/road conditions, and really it means feeling safe while using the transportation system over all modes. So as you're using the system in these areas, do you feel safe, or is safety an issue in that area? And then second is mode choice, flexibility to choose alternative travel options, opportunity to make trips via walking or biking, access to transit. So does that exist in that area, or is that an issue that needs to be addressed? Then the next mobility issues are innovation, new and emerging transportation technologies that can be applied to the existing system. And then we have network connectivity, system connections to improve travel efficiency. And this includes first and last mile connections. There was a little bit of discussion earlier about when you get off at a mobility stop, do you have the options available to you to make that last movement? So is that an issue? Then our last 2 mobility issues surrounding freight, congestion and accessibility issues along roadways, and significant delay in conducting business. So do we have freight issues in that area? And then congestion, recurring inconsistency of travel times and bottlenecks on the network. Probably the one that most people are familiar with. We've got a lot of response in that way. So I went through identifying the focus areas of congestion and the different mobility options that we looked at. I do want to, let me see if I can get one more thing that I'd like to have everybody take a look at. So we also sent, when we sent the homework, we sent the story map. And what you're seeing here is the section of the story map that shows you what's called the mixed use indicator concept overlaid with basically your travel time index in 2019, so existing. So this tells you where the darker blues are where you might have higher mixed use when it comes to land use. And then the reds and the greens show you the more congested roadways in the facility. And this helps give a little bit more information, a little bit more context to some things. So I'm sorry, I think that one, the one I was showing you was actually 20. I think that actually might be 2045 because I think this one is 2019. And so you can see it a little bit more clear, but and how these areas of congestion were zoomed in using that mixed use indicator concept.
Tyler,
So just wanted to share that. Go ahead.
You were correct the first time. Anytime that
Oh, okay.
traffic
Yeah.
or travel time index is overlaid with the mixed use index, we use 2019 because we cannot forecast land use in the future. So we impose the current land use assumptions with current travel time index issues.
Sure. Thank you, Adam. And so as we look at these and talk about these different areas, if we need to come in and look at some of these more specifically, we can certainly do that. Just wanted to share that with the team. All right, let me get back. The last mobility issue that we had was land use and transportation integration, which means development decisions should consider the existing capacity and intended function of a transportation facility, recognizing the impact the development will have on the system and its facilities. So if there's an issue that it looks like maybe, for instance, we have a lot of density in housing, but we don't have the same sort of sidewalk infrastructure or some other transportation option, and so that may be identified as an issue in one of these focus areas. So those are the 7 mobility issues, and we'll go into Mentimeter here in a second. So just to reorient everybody, Menti.com and the code is 10478. So what we are going to do before we dive into each specific focus area is we're going to ask you to identify what you think of those 7 mobility issues, what you think is the most important in each one of these different focus areas of congestion. And so let me switch over to the, whoops, sorry. Why is that not, sorry. Can I make this full screen or do I have to go back? I can make it. So the first question is, which mobility options should be considered for the I-40 focus area? And we want you to select the one that you think is the most important for that area.
And Tyler, we can pick multiple, not just one, right?
Adam, remind me, did we want just to select one, or did we want everybody to be able to select multiple?
So it's actually designed that you can select multiple, but then we can kind of see where the majorities lie.
Okay. So please feel free. Just wanted to make sure.
Good, thanks.
All right, I think gotten as much response on this one as we're going to get. You're going to see very interesting contrast here in a second. So just looking at this, you see safety and freight come up to the top, and innovation, land use, congestion right in the middle, and then mode choice down at the bottom. And so if we head back to the PowerPoint, these are the results from the homework that we sent out. So you'll see that mode choice was number 1, followed by safety, and then congestion, and then the other 4 down below. So given the responses that we just received through the immediate survey results, and then what we received in the homework, I'd open it up to the group if anybody wanted to discuss those results or anything specific about the issues in this area. And this will be everybody's opportunity to tell us what you experience, what you know, help us become more aware of what the issues are in the area, so that so that we can make sure that we're addressing those.
Tyler, this is Bob. Are we, with safety, are we to assume with the results that the people who responded and shows that category believe that there is a safety problem of some sort or another, or problems, plural, in the I-40 focus area at this point in time? Is that correct?
There was some comments that we received more specific, and it was really specific to the I-40 I-77 interchange, and when that's completed, that you'd probably see a lot of the safety issues go down. I think it's very recent in their minds, so I think that's where that focus was. And so as you're thinking about the rest of the area, maybe safety wasn't as big of a focus once that project is complete.
But perhaps safety is viewed as an issue on the adjacent network, and maybe not so much. I mean, safety probably is an issue there. In any construction zone, safety is always an issue, but perhaps some of the issues were not on 77 itself, but on the surrounding network.
Sure.
Okay.
Any other comments that anyone wants to talk about or address in this area?
This is Andrew. I guess I'll just say, from my standpoint, I picked safety, one, from what you mentioned about the never-ending interchange project that's going on. And besides that, I mean, just the interchanges on both 77 and 40, minus the main interchange between the two interstates, I think all those interchanges are pretty obsolete with short on-ramps and just getting up to speed. So for me, it's just the interchanges in the area I think are, from a roadway standpoint, are pretty unsafe.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Any other discussion about any of the other issues that of the 7?
Andrew, this is Adam. Thank you for that comment. Actually, as a part of the study, we are obviously we have the opportunity to evaluate everything up to the highway facility itself, so that it does include the interchange and ramp facilities. So that is good feedback to understand kind of the issues of how those interchanges or the string of interchanges interact with the highway and the safety of those that use it.
And I'll also mention that I'm pretty familiar with that area. With the connectivity issue, besides just hopping in your car and basically crossing underneath or over 40, there's no real modal connection besides vehicles in that area. 40 kind of acts as a barrier. As a cyclist, you can't really safely get from the south side of 40 to the north side. So I think connectivity could be an issue. Just another thing that I've noticed in my time in Statesville.
And
Thank
this
you,
is
Andrew.
Bob. This is Bob again. One thing that Andrew reminded me about was in terms of the issue of safety, and then the issue of land use and how they can be connected in many ways. And I'm thinking about the exit from US 21 in the vicinity of I-40 and the interchange there. I mean, you have it's kind of a free-for-all in terms of curb cuts and things of that sort. And that can present a real safety issue in an area, and that is directly tied to the land use issue. Every business owner wants a curb cut, and you can understand why the business owner might want a curb cut, but it does contribute to the safety issue in areas like that.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Again, as a reminder, any additional comments or anything that anybody in the group wants to discuss, we can continue after the workshop. And if there's anything, again, that you don't get to this afternoon, if you want to attend tomorrow, feel free to do that as well.
And Tyler, can I just jump in as you're switching screens there?
Absolutely.
This is Adam again. So those specific comments, Andrew and Bob, about some of the physical components along any of the facilities in any of these areas, that helps inform the team a little bit more. We can look at maps all day long, and we can look at information that's been provided to us, of course, in as much fashion as we can. But those that live and work around here are the ones that can provide us the most insight. And I have driven the corridor several times, and even then, that doesn't give me the expert status of understanding the entire corridor. So hearing those comments today is going to be very valuable. So thank you. We'll keep it coming.
Thank you, Adam. So we'll continue to do the second question for the Mentimeter, in which just select the mobility options for the NC 150 focus area.
So I have a question on this one. This is Stuart Basham with NCDOT. We have a project that will widen NC 150 and improve the interchange. So 150 today is heavily congested in the Mooresville area. Should we be looking at this based on the current condition, or should we take into consideration the fact that there is a project that's going to make dramatic improvements along that corridor?
Now, Stuart, I do want to ask, what are the extents of that project? You mentioned the interchange. It's an interchange improvement project, and you're also extending it down the corridor towards the town of Mooresville. Is that correct?
Well, it's an interchange improvement along 150 in Mooresville.
Gotcha. Yeah. So Tyler, if you actually switched over to the map really quick to show the geographic extent of what we've preliminarily identified to be this focus area. And so it actually doesn't, I think we recognize that there were some things happening with the interchange in the short and long term. And so the area doesn't even cover it because we knew that improvements were coming down the pipeline. We were more focused on downtown Mooresville and some of the issues of NC 150 becoming constrained as you move further east. And so that was more of our focus. It was kind of downtown around the train tracks, and then NC 150 moving towards the east.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Absolutely. Now, again,
right around the interchange area was 77.
Gotcha. And I think, we also reviewed some of the planning and some of the projects that NC 150 is going to be widened up to a certain point to just north of downtown Mooresville. But then once you get to that point, it becomes a 2-lane facility. And I think that the horizon year for any expansion efforts on that was in flux. And so this is just an opportunity to kind of look at circulation of local mobility options, whether it's vehicular or other networks.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Sure. So looking at the results, mode choice seems to be come up again, and then land use as well as safety in this area. So if we switch back, over to this, and we look at the I-50 or NC-150 focus area results, see connectivity, it's really very consistent across all of these issues from the results we got from the homework. Mode choice connectivity, land use, congestion, innovation, and freight. So there was talk in some of the comments that we received, high volume of traffic with too many stoplights, bicycle and walking doesn't exist, and lots of commercial development, and future heavy vehicle traffic and way too many stoplights, too much commercial development close to the roadway, heavy vehicle traffic, and lots of stoplights. So we got consistent messaging, and it's kind of interesting when you hear a discussion about traffic signals and lots of heavy vehicle traffic, that morphs its way through so many issues. It could be safety, land use, congestion. People could think you could be more innovative. You're not, if you have a lot of traffic signals, then you maybe don't have the right level of connectivity for a system. So that similar comment can really cross lots of issues. So are there any comments about what we've seen, and you think something might be wrong, something should be higher up on our list of identified mobility issues? Anything that anybody'd like to bring to our attention in this focus area? Things that are ongoing.
Well, I think when we had the discussion earlier about just the differences in land use throughout the region, I'm just going to say I think this corridor, from what I remember the box you shown of what we're looking at in the study area, just this corridor alone proves the difference in land uses, since which would be the western part of this area is very heavily commercial, and then once you get past 115 outside of town, you're looking at more. It's still residential kind of, but it's more of a rural residential, and so just looking at this area alone just kind of gives you that feeling that in this region the land use plays a major factor in what we're looking at with the study.
Thank you, Andrew.
So does where the sewer lines are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you put a highway with water and sewer, and that's very different than a highway without water and sewer.
All right. Well, thank you. And we'll
Actually,
continue. Go ahead.
Before you jump off, I do want to keep that image on the screen really quick. And, Bob, I would love for you to kind of expand on this if you feel appropriate. But I do want to point out that we certainly recognize that land use authority that lies solely within the local jurisdiction. And we have done our best to try to understand everything that exists based on every single jurisdiction with their own definitions through this mixed use indicator. And so all that's doing is really kind of telling us all as transportation/planning professionals and elected officials, really to kind of see where current municipalities have defined a high magnitude of variation in land use components, and then that can inform us as to how to offer a solution or strategy or more than just one within and around that area. So maybe from the rural side, as an example, I'm just throwing things out there, from the rural side of Mooresville, looking at kind of a greenway feeder that kind of links in and connects into downtown across the train tracks, and then feeds into what we're seeing as the potential for a mixed use area, whether that is business or a live work play situation or even a corporate campus. I know Lowe's is just to the south and west of this. Is so just thinking outside the box as to what types of things can come about. So Bob, I don't know if you want to kind of expand on how land use plays into this study beyond that.
Adam, just to say that, I mean, it's integral to this study. I mean, if we were to only look at purely transportation related issues, we'd be only doing half the job, and I'm probably being generous by saying half, because everything that we do as transportation planners is influenced by, you might say, governed by the land use decisions that all the municipalities and the counties make.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Actually, I'm going to keep it on this. Thank you for the discussion. Appreciate that. So moving, this will work. Yeah, to the next focus area down is I-485. So, and its intersection on the north side with I-77. So go ahead and make the selections for what you think is vital as a mobility issue in this area, whether it be safety, mode choice, connectivity, land use, congestion, innovation, or freight. All right. Interesting land use is number one among our discussions. I don't know if that's due to it being on the front of everybody's mind, since it's a heavy topic of discussion so far today. But looking forward, this is how it kind of shook out when we sent out the homework. A lot of issues with mode choice. I think that comes with the focus area being where two interstates connect, and looking at that. I think also that may be a reason why you see land use down below here, but some of the discussion today has spurred some thoughts about how that might be better improved. Obviously, you'll see congestion up here. I think it's interesting that we had quite a few responses on connectivity and innovation. So some areas for us to be aware of and provide additional insight in. So is there any discussion about any of this information, something that you think that it's kind of interesting that it's moved high up on the list, or something that you think should be higher? And somebody in some of our comments, one person wrote, construction is the main culprit in that. I'd like to see more infrastructure for bike and ped. Sidewalk and safe cycle for connectivity. Again, more information on that. Lack of interconnectivity of the existing network. This is interesting, and I'm very familiar with this, living on the I-40 corridor. Because of Lake Norman and the historical townships, there are no viable alternatives when there's an incident on I-77. So that's just from one of the comments that we received.
And Tyler, we as a consultant team, we certainly recognize that this is probably the largest of any of the focus areas that we pinpointed. The town of Huntersville and northern Charlotte / Mecklenburg County. I mean, that area is exploding, and as Bob highlighted on his personal note of just some of the connectivity issues across the highway itself for alternative modes should be considered critical. And just as another example, we're going to have to continue to closely coordinate with Jason Weger and the Connect Beyond project, the regional transit plan that's occurring. And we've certainly coordinated with CATS to understand their efforts that have been put in thus far for the North Corridor mass transit study, whether that is commuter rail, bus rapid transit, or light rail as another alternative, or express bus down the hot lanes. So everything that has been explored is on our table too. And we're going to coordinate with that other large regional plan to follow it closely to kind of see where we can both end up in terms of strategies and solutions.
Yeah, and Adam, this is Brian. As I mentioned earlier, you know, the mode we are currently looking at and doing the study for is for a robust BRT system utilizing the hot lanes. So we did a analysis and you know, looking at all those other modes, and that's the current approach is to do the BRT system in the near term and potentially the commuter rail in the long term if things change with the owner of the railroad.
Gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, definitely a good discussion. So we want to look at the next focus area for us. Let me get to that, which is the Asbury Chapel / Eastfield Road focus area. And we want to look to the group to see what their thoughts are on the main mobility issues within that area. All right, great. It looks like connectivity, mode choice, and safety are three that have really jumped to the top on this one. I think it closely aligns with what we heard from the homework, where mode choice was a little bit favored above pretty much everything else. Was the same. So it seems to indicate that we want additional options in this area, and there may be additional issues. There was some positive comments that the realignments have helped, but there are some still issues with at least the perception of narrow roads. There was some concern about limited bike and pedestrian options outside of neighborhoods. Limited bus, again, limited bike and ped, and there was a comment that this area is not really suited for any type of freight traffic. So those are some of the things we heard. Does anybody have any comments on this area, what we may need to know about, or any issues with what seems to be the clear, or the few that seem to be the clear mobility issues within this area?
Tyler, this is Bob. I just wanted to say that when we were just voting now, I would have liked to have been able to vote for connectivity multiple times because for me that is really the biggest issue there, and it affects congestion, of course.
Hmm.
But I think in fact it may be one of the leading causes of it in that part of the study area, just the complete lack of connectivity in that area. I live relatively close, and it's very frustrating.
And this is
Yeah,
Andrew. I'll just add, kind of with the connectivity thing, is on the southern side of Eastfield Road, there's a bunch of different neighborhoods that have been connected together when they were built, which is a good thing. However, if you're traveling by other mode than automobile, you literally have to have a map in your brain to know which roads connect to which roads connect to which road, because just the infrastructure is just it's screwy. So while the neighborhoods do connect, you can't really get anywhere outside of your particular, I don't know, I would just call it your particular street, without being almost a human map. So the connectivity is a little tough there, as Bob mentioned.
yeah. This is Brian, and I wanted to say that as well, that I agree with both Andrew and Bob, that that I just think of connectivity in that area, and just working on the commuter rail project for a couple decades ago through the last decade. There's a lot of dotted lines on maps through this area, and thinking of Hambright and I think Brown and other things that were going to make this a more connected area, and a lot of them have not been built out yet.
If only there was a transportation planner that lived in this area.
If
It's
only.
lousy with them. That's the problem.
No, and I certainly understand, and I'd love to have a robust system with a lot of options. I think that's admirable. I think you brought up a very good point, Andrew, that it can get confusing to that. I'd like to have things connected. I'm interested is you brought up the connectivity and can get confused. Is there an issue with speed or volume, since this being neighborhoods that are all connected?
I think it's funny, being that the connectivity of the neighborhoods is so confusing. I think it keeps people off those roads. So the speed and volume don't really seem to be an issue, because, like I said, unless you're really, really confident in what you're doing, you're going to get lost back there, and you're going to end up spending a lot more time in these neighborhoods than you would just staying on Eastfield Road going down towards Prosperity Church.
Yeah, and just to reiterate that, like, it's confusing by design. So each neighborhood probably was required to connect to the next neighborhood, but the streets weren't built in a straight line fashion to make sure it's connected. It just kind of almost one dead end of one neighborhood kind of went into the other one, just because it was probably a requirement. But I don't think there was any sort of larger vision of making connectivity a benefit. It was more of just a requirement, and the more confusing, the less traffic through the neighborhood. I've seen this when I lived up in Huntersville, through the Birkdale neighborhood, not the Birkdale retail, but on the other side of 73. You can get to 21 and 73 through there, but you had to know what you were doing, because it involves several turns and that to do it. So I'm sure that they were really just trying to discourage people from using the neighborhood as a throughput.
All right, thanks.
Those statements, and it is a very convoluted, indirect series of streets that you would have to use to try to work your way through there. There are long-term plans, as Brian noted, basically dotted lines on maps that haven't been built yet, that will provide some direct connections. But those aren't funded projects at this time, so they'll be built at some point. But we don't have any way of knowing when.
Sure. And I appreciate that. And this is a great conversation, and this is like a prime example of something that I would never be able to know without like having you guys provide that information to us, and the anecdotal experiences. So I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that.
Right, Tyler, before you move on, this is
Sure.
Radha. I know this is not the focus area Augustine asked me to join this meeting for, but this is where I live, so it's impossible for me to not to comment on this. I said ditto 10 times to everything everyone else said that. And I'm with Bob. If you let me, just vote on connectivity 20 times, I would have. That's absolutely the challenge. As you're looking at some other projects, you probably would have come, or you will, if not yet, you will come. You look at probably other things like Hambright. I think somebody mentioned that. That's a project that was considered. And even more recent than that, City of Charlotte considered Ridge Road extension. It's one of those, a great plan. Somehow a corridor was protected. Except it happens the corridor is in between a row of houses, so basically behind houses. So everybody thought it's protected until they really started going into the real study, and nobody wanted, so the project basically died, at least for now. So that's another example of how there was a vision to provide a connectivity, but unfortunately that's not happening. I don't know where City of Charlotte is with that. Augustine, you may be able to find that out. Obviously much quicker and faster than I am, but it's right out off of 485 interchange. A great project. And even though these 3 parallel roads with 7 roundabouts was a great vision, and I still think it is a great vision to be built as one set of projects with 3 bridges with a split diamond with roundabouts everywhere. Not even a year after those were built, of course, it was congested because this area is growing, just like how Ballantyne was growing probably about 10 years ago, but that's exactly what is happening in this area right now. So NCDOT, Stuart can clarify this, but about a year ago, NCDOT came back and then, did some more construction at one of the exit ramps at the roundabout. Barely within 5 years after the freeway was open, they already had to be there and do some improvements. Majority of that is because of lack of connectivity. Again, it's going back to the same thing. So
That's right. And after the interchange was opened, it really didn't even take 5 years. It took us about a year to develop the project. We were already seeing the congestion out there. It was backing down the ramp out into the main line on 485, and it was backing almost a mile back up the L line on the shoulder. So with the amount of growth we have out there and the lack of connectivity, it created a real safety for us. We did a project rather hastily to go in and add a second lane on that ramp and make some additional improvements to that roundabout and the connecting roads to the roundabout to move more traffic through that roundabout and get those people that were queued up on the 485 main line, get them off of 485 and onto the ramp and on their way.
Thanks, everybody. That's really good discussion and insight. Appreciate that.
Yeah, just one final note, like one of my sore spots is what happened at Hambright. That we did a lot of work to pull the railroad off of 115 and it was relocated, and we really were selling that as a potential that if there ever was a rail stop there, it had 360 degrees of greenfield, so it had so much potential, and we were really touting that it could be a great TOD or dense neighborhood, and the only thing that ever got built there was a super Walmart and some 3-story apartments. That's very typical in very suburban areas. So it was just one of those, we talk a lot about the connectivity, but the land use in the area just never was conducive for the type of densities we were talking about for certain modes.
Thanks, Brian. So if we Head back to Mentimeter. The next area for us to discuss is the area of I-85 and 77. And so we'll see how it goes. What you think the top mobility issues are there?
I can tell you with this one, number one is I get complaints between weekly. It's been a topic for quite some time. We have two banks there that are problematic, and we have rollovers. Made some improvements in recent years, and I don't see rollovers there nearly as much as we used to 8 or 10 years ago. But still a problem.
Stuart, remind me, is there a project, is there an interchange project there? I know there, every time I come, there's so much, seems like it's always under construction in some way for something, but is there like an interchange improvement project?
There is one there that was recently funded. I say recently, within the last 2 years. It probably won't get into construction until probably 25, 26 early, because we haven't actually started on that project yet. And it was one of those that was placed on suspension when all the suspension came down sometime back.
Sure. Sure. And I think we can see from the responses here, safety is an issue, congestion's an issue. This is right in line with what we heard through our homework results. Safety, obviously, I think when you see a lot of these responses for mode choice, you're seeing that really that focus area is talking a lot about interstate connection. And so we have a lot of, there's very limited mode choice in that area. But I think safety and congestion and other things, this is probably the one other than Uptown that generated the most response and the most issues, because it's certainly one that's used by most. And certainly a cause for congestion and safety issues, definitely.
Yeah, a lot of folks on 85 South, particularly in the AM, this will back up so badly that they'll bypass this and go 2 miles down and get off at Brookshire Boulevard and come in that way if their destination is the Uptown area. It's actually faster to do that.
Yeah, if you've ever talked to me, I will say that people can be very smart when it comes to transportation and figure out what the quickest way is. They will figure out which ways you can go, whether it's through a neighborhood, along an interstate, whatever it is, to get where they want to go, especially if they're in a vehicle. So I'm not surprised at that at all. Not surprised to hear that anecdote at all. Any more additional discussion on the I-85 area? There was a comment in one of the things that we received about Statesville Avenue and BRT. Is there someone on the call that might want to just provide some insight there?
Again, so when we looked at all the modes, we looked at BRT on Statesville and we looked at BRT on 77 and we looked at light rail on Statesville. But the BRT and light rail on Statesville were eliminated as choices in favor of the BRT on 77. So I don't know if people are still remembering that or what. So that's the only thing I can say to that.
Oh, okay. Great.
Brian, would there be with a BRT service operating along 77 somehow, would there be any need or opportunity to have that exit the highway there to service any part off of I-77, or is it really, are we looking to design it to to shuttle in people from the northern parts of the county and Iredell County. Once it enters the metro area, it kind of becomes more of an express service down the hot lane.
Well, there are several stations proposed along the way, and we would utilize the direct connects that are existing, and we're also potentially proposing additional direct connects on 77. So as far as 85, are you suggesting like you would come in 85 and then I don't know what your question is specific to this area.
No, I was just trying to think in terms of all of the flow that's happening within the very short distance between Statesville Avenue and 77 along 85, and how, or if CATS in the city were planning to create some type of connection for the BRT service somewhere along within that area, and if it would be using existing or new infrastructure to allow that connection to happen. That's what I was curious about. Or if that's still up in the air.
Yeah. It's still up in the air, although I will say like the first stop that we're looking at is more towards North Lake Mall,
Gotcha.
and utilizing the Lakeview Direct Connect. So south of that, we're not looking at any way to get off of 77, between that area and downtown Charlotte. There's several north of that, of course, but we're not looking south at this time.
Gotcha. That's helpful.
All right. Thank you, guys. So the next one is Uptown Charlotte. Let me get us over to that question and the mobility options there, or mobility issues in that focus area. Give people a few more seconds. So this one is interesting. The responses are interesting. I'm seeing we see 6 responses for innovation. Obviously, mode choice in the downtown area is not a surprise, but I'm really interested for this one for anybody who selected innovation. And here's our results from the homework. Anybody who selected innovation want to talk about that a little bit more as it relates to Uptown Charlotte?
I guess my thought, this is Brian. It was just that there's no space for additional lanes, additional land use. It's pretty much built out. So the way you solve the congestion and the mode choices and innovation would have to be one of those keys in looking at new technologies and the future of innovation.
Tyler, this is Bob, and I was just going to say the same thing that Brian said. There's just not much more you can do from you can't really widen roads too much. There's reasonably good connectivity. I mean, probably the best connectivity in the throughout the study area. And so the only real answer that can be applied to a significant degree is innovation.
Thank you, Bob and Brian. Is anyone else?
This is Jason at Central Line. I would just add that there seems to be an appetite at the city as well, in terms of the sustainability folks to really look at smart cities applications and that kind of thing. So maybe it's just a matter of taking advantage as well of that interest and, you know, integrating the two with, you know, with day-to-day transportation work.
Sure, Jason. When I was at the town of Cary, they were doing a little bit of that. Has Charlotte been involved in that initiative?
And when you say that initiative,
I just remember when I was at the town of Cary, there was a Smart Cities Challenge and
oh yeah,
other things like that. Or
yeah, yes, they are. There's probably some things that are going to be different from Cary's, but certainly are participating in that, and now have what's referred to as a Bloomberg Award, the American Clean Climate Challenge, I believe it is, Cities Climate Challenge. So anyway, others on this call probably can talk more about it, but just the combination of efforts, both on that 2-year project as well as much broader through strategic energy action planning and other activities, may all, you know, fit well with trying to do things more innovatively near Uptown.
Who is this is Adam. Who is managing that Bloomberg Award? Is the city directly, or is there some? Is Sustain Charlotte involved with that, or because what I'm trying to think is how to get some other folks at the table for when we engage with our stakeholders.
So
This is Julie. Oh, go ahead. Somebody.
Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I think it's going through the manager's office, and it's mostly with regard. We've just applied for our 2nd year of the grant, and it's mostly having to do with. You know, I'm just trying to figure out how it would tie into this kind of work. I think a lot of it has more to do with capital expenditures for electric vehicles, for the fleet, and that kind of thing. But if somebody wants to shoot me an email, I'd be happy to make a connection with some of our, you know, the folks in our sustainability department, Sarah Hazel, who's really working on that grant. But I wish it was more along the lines of traffic congestion. But I think it's more closely tied to the CAP with regards to electric vehicles and building, you know, efficiency, that kind of thing.
Understood. Yeah, Augustine, I'd like to work with you and Judy to see if we can get that contact information from Julie and at least inform them of what our efforts are and see if they would like to be involved. And Julie, on that note, you know, that could certainly kind of play into what a strategy could be if that certainly is CRTPO's goal for the region, working with our partners at RFAS in South Carolina. You know, if we're looking at innovation as it relates to fuel efficiencies and reducing reliance on aspects, especially if that plays into how North Carolina may look at new revenue models for building in public revenue for transportation facilities and whatnot, I think that there certainly could be ways to look at that. So,
well, I mean, the conversation is very timely given what we're talking about in NC First.
Yes.
And it's interesting because I think I mentioned in our meeting this past week on NC First that I kind of see some conflicting visions, because at the state level and certainly at the national level, everybody is really studying how to transition to charging for vehicle miles traveled, at transitioning not necessarily away from the fuel tax, but in addition to the fuel tax. And yet, you know, at our level in urban centers, you know, not in rural centers, but in urban centers, we're trying to get people out of cars and trying to reduce traffic congestion and trying to reduce vehicle miles traveled. So it is a very holistic conversation that really needs to happen. And when you talk about some of these things in congestion management, it is in a little bit of conflict with where we think we can get revenue for the future for our transportation needs.
No, I thank you for that feedback. And just as a quick aside, we do have, as a part of our study, we have started to connect with Tony Lathrop and some other members as a part of the NC First Commission,
Okay,
even before
great.
these discussions. And so we are following what they are producing in terms of their analysis over the past, decade and kind of where they've landed and some of their thoughts to move forward. And we certainly want to build on what that commission um, has developed and learned and some of their thoughts to move forward. And we have some folks from other DOTs and urban centers from across the country as a part of our project team that will kind of help provide some more insight as to how some other metro areas developed innovative ways to provide and produce really solid revenue funding results for a multimodal approach. So
Okay.
I just
Yeah.
want to let you know that.
If you and Tony and I talk quite a bit, so he and I were talking about. Well, let me back up. If anybody's interested, go to the NC First, the recording of last week's meeting, and if you just listen to the last 40 minutes, it is of the meeting, because it's a 3-hour meeting, and honestly, it's the whole thing is very interesting, every meeting. But the last 35-40 minutes of this particular meeting, every commissioner was asked what their takeaway is at this point from what we've heard, and all the specialists from around the country that have been brought in to talk to us. And so Ward Nye, who is the chairman of CEO of Martin Marietta, is the chair of this committee along with Nancy McFarland. And he had his sort of top 10 priorities that he sees, and we all sort of riffed off of those, and that'll give you an idea as to what people are thinking and what the direction is that this is going in. People talked about tolling. They've talked about Stephen DeMay from Duke Energy talked a lot about how much they would like to pursue sustainability and electric vehicle charging stations, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of good information in there, and we could certainly, Tony and I would be happy to meet with anybody to kind of pull it together so that it can be part of one conversation.
That would be awesome, Julie. I appreciate that. I think I'm going to be following up with you and Tony very shortly on that one.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that discussion. That's great. We are down to about our last 35 minutes, so I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. And so I'll push us through real fast here. And we'll go to the next one here in the US 74 I-277 focus area, and the mobility issues there, and give everybody an opportunity to provide input on this question. Thank you. As questions continue to pour in, it looks like congestion and safety coming up. No surprise with those. Kind of in line. It was kind of everything in this area. Obviously, there's a lot of people that we had to move through this area considerably. Are there any specifics that anyone wants to provide or get on the table in any of these mobility issue areas?
Tyler, how did innovation score with the polling in comparison to this, to the earlier results that we're seeing on the screen now?
Kind of second or third.
Okay.
A little bit different than the way it is on the with the homework results.
I would have thought innovation, considering it's very similar to the Uptown focus area or whatever we call
Yeah,
the previous one. I would have thought innovation would have been a little bit higher on people's radar.
I think here what you get in an area like this is it's a lot of everything, and you tend to focus more on what's in front of you and what's immediate when there's nothing else. Or let me say it another way. If you don't feel safe and it's always congested and it feels like it takes you forever to get through, that's what you're going to concentrate on. And innovation might be just as vital, but it's not right in front of you. And I think that may be what you're getting here, where when you get into downtown, or excuse me, uptown, um, they realize that like there's nothing else that you can really do. Um, and so maybe they don't feel, especially if you're in a vehicle, I don't think that you would feel like really that unsafe in an uptown setting. Um, but it can be congested. Maybe that's where that happens. But I do agree that you have a lot of the similar issues in this area as compared to uptown.
And I think what you said is reasonable. That's what's right in front of folks. And although safety is an interesting one, because I bet safety in an uptown area is going to be, I mean, I'm thinking about crashes. Crashes are probably not going to be terribly severe because of low speeds, but it's still an issue. So okay.
Yeah, and when you ask questions like this, um, what's safe to one person is man has so many variables, or what feels safe. If you have kids and your kids are always with you, you have a way different perspective on safe conditions as you would if you didn't have children or older adults. It's just the perspective that you have based on your situation can run the gamut, especially when you're talking about safety. But with any of these, um, and
And
so if
Tyler,
you don't, sure, go ahead.
can you actually switch to the map really quick too? I want to just kind of bring in focus
Absolutely.
on this actual. This is actually a very small area, and when it was identified, it was mainly focused on the.
Interchange. Right.
It was mainly focused on interchange, and then kind of leading into downtown, kind of along um, Church Street, surrounding the Bank of America Stadium, and it is capturing the Charlotte Pipe and Foundry site, which was just sold, or I don't know if they sold, but I know they're moving. So I apologize if I misspoke on that one. But it is mainly focused on the interchange and kind of the the parallel ramp facilities that interact with it. And I think this is probably the start of Rada's project and how Rada is going to be coordinating. We'll be coordinating with him on the 77 South component. This is where my pain starts with my commute pre-pandemic. If I leave at the wrong time, this quadruples my commute time to work. This one interchange. So.
And that interchange is terrible.
Oh yeah.
So from a safety perspective, thank you for the context there, Adam, and reminding me about the size of this sub area. And so yeah, I could see where with the condition of that interchange really had an influence on the outcome of the polling. Yep. Thank you.
Maybe if,
Yeah.
if Stuart's still on the call, is there anything funded, planned right here?
Sorry, I was on mute. We're talking about 74 and 277.
Yes, can you see it on the screen, Stuart?
Yes. So we do have a funded project there, I-6022, improvements on 277 between Kenilworth and North Davidson, but it also includes improvements on 74 back to somewhere between Hawthorne and Pecan. So it would make improvements here in interchange as part of that project. Unfortunately, that project was funded in the last cycle of STI. Due to the state's financial difficulties, it's been pushed back due to the back end of the TIP. So those improvements aren't scheduled to happen until around 2028, 2029 right now. And that project it is being reprioritized in the current cycle of STI. So once the financial difficulties are resolved and the reprioritization is completed, it's possible that project.
Thank you, Stuart. All right, let me go. So the next one is South Boulevard and Park Road. If everybody will provide answers to the mobility issues within that area. All right, well, I appreciate that. It seems to be fairly consistent across safety, connectivity, land use, and congestion. Congestion popping up. And I think you'll see from this that as we move forward, congestion was the winning getter in this area. Does anybody see anything that's they think should be adjusted here? Is congestion really the biggest issue around this area? I think, James, is this something that you are familiar with, that you drive on a recurring basis?
I don't know if I would say recurring.
Okay.
I am so well familiar. This is Agustin. I am familiar with this area. And I would say this is pretty consistent with what I can see. The freight, however, I see that pretty high for this area.
Okay. That's good to know, Augustine. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would probably go with congestion as my top one.
And our office is actually located just within this area, and so I would certainly maybe reconsider connectivity potentially, especially in the east and west directions as you move further south.
That's a good point, Adam.
Good. Well, thanks. I just want to, as we dive a little bit more into South Carolina, just want to orient us. We got about 25 minutes left, but I want to give due time to our remaining focus areas. So which mobility options would you consider as big issues for the NC 160, NC 49 focus area?
And you may want to toggle to the map to give a little context on that one. I know that those roadways do traverse a significant area.
Sorry. Here it is on the more of the western side and southwestern side of the area. We'll go back to the results. It looks like I have a few. I think it looks like we have congestion and connectivity. And I'm going to right back to this. Oh, there was, oops, sorry. Some additional. Yeah, congestion and connectivity. And so congestion, connectivity, mode choice still obviously high up issues in this area. Does anybody have any comments or anything with these mobility issues as identified?
So there are some projects here over the long term to increase connectivity in this area. Connectivity is a bit of a challenge in this area, and the Steel Creek area over the last 20 years has experienced some pretty strong growth, and it's led to some pretty rapidly increasing congestion numbers. We are working on some projects to widen 160. We have a couple of interchange improvement projects in this area. All this is not going to happen anytime in the immediate future due to the funding issues, but Carowinds Boulevard extension was funded recently in the last round of STI, and the 160-49 intersection is a challenge. A lot of people attempt to bypass it by using Shopton Road West and some other roads in the area. I get lots of complaints from this area about different roads. So congestion is definitely something that we're well aware of down here. We have a project down there at the state line on the road where we're widening 160 right now to try to get that intersection. Didn't have any turn lanes. It's operated very poorly for a number of years. So there are a lot of congestion issues in this area in particular, and connectivity I would probably rank second issue for this area.
Thank you, Stuart.
Kind of surprised that freight didn't score a bit higher, considering the employment base in that part of the city. It's significant. Freight related activities are a significant employment base down there. So I think as we go through our say our final recommendations and so forth, I mean, yeah, it looks okay. It's a little bit better than I expected right there, Tyler. But I think we'll have to make sure that we really do have a kind of a freight focus, if you will, for anything that comes out of the study regarding this part of the study area.
Sure. And I think if you compare where freight lands in this graph compared to other study areas, I think this does have more of an emphasis in that area. All right. Well, Adam, I'm going to suggest that we just kind of go through the next few mobility issue graphs just based on the homework, so that we're cognizant of everyone's time, if that's okay.
Perfect.
All right. So the next one was the South Carolina-North Carolina state line. In focus area results, you'll see mode choice. Again, because this is such a small, centralized focus area with a lot of emphasis on the interstate area, even though we're not specifically looking at I-77. There's a lot of issues around mode choice congestion. I think there's always that difficulty when you're crossing major jurisdictions, obviously 2 states, that consistency by funding and project and other things can always be an issue. So there's probably going to be a lot of things that we need to look at or need to address near the state line. Is there anything, given the results that we see here, that anyone wants to discuss or challenge, or just confirm that it's right in line with what you might think?
This is Agustin. Yes, similar to the 277 and I-77, I think we have the same situation here. where this area is really compressed in the section between 485 and 77. So we're not looking at a larger area here for the entire state line through the Charlotte or through the metro area.
Yeah, I think what you can learn from this graph is everything is important. Certainly in this area. All right, and I'll go ahead and move through to the Fort Mill Southern Bypass focus area. You can see again, this consistent across most of these study areas. Mode choice is a big issue. Connectivity, land use. I think the interesting thing to take away from this is safety was low. So that's interesting to me. I tend to think that safety is number one, and then everything else falls below that for most issues. But it's very interesting, and I'll have to think about why that is and what we might be able to learn about this area in that regard. Does anybody else have any additional comments? Go ahead.
I know that there's not many folks on this call that work or are familiar with the network down there, but Bob, I certainly found it interesting that US 21, the reason why we really highlighted this section was it is only a 2-lane facility, pretty much within the extents of the area that we drew the box around. And so around a growing downtown area, I was kind of surprised that I know that it parallels 77, but it kind of serves as their local circulator, and it's becoming more and more congested. And I think that they were intending that bypass, that loop component, to really kind of help disperse some local traffic. But the US 21 facility is certainly an interesting component to their network down there that may need some help.
Yeah, I think we might need some more conversation with the folks in South Carolina. I know we've had some challenges with getting them engaged in this effort. So that is odd that safety is scored so low.
Yeah. I think David is joining tomorrow, and I don't know if Mayor Geddes from Rock Hill will be joining or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So to get down to our last one, South Carolina 161 and South Carolina 122. You see mode choice again. Everything else kind of flattens out to the same, but mode choice, I think we're hearing a constant theme across all of these areas, and I'm sure it's even outside the areas in the corridor study area. We really need to look to address mode choice. It seems to be very, very important across the region, and so we want to address that. Any other issues? I think most people on the call are outside of South Carolina, but any comments on any of the information that we received here? All right. Well, again, I really appreciate everybody's time, and with that, I'll let Adam give us a brief recap for discussion. If he's ready.
Sorry, I'm here talking to myself on mute. So thank you, Tyler, and the CRTPO team for helping make this virtual workshop possible. We've heard a lot of great feedback. I'm not going to go through every one of those details, but going from north to south, we've got a lot of things to think about. And I really think the live results kind of shed some new light on top of the homework that we received. And so we will work together to compile this information. We will have it on hand as a piece of dialogue with the group tomorrow in case anybody wants to join for another 3.5 hours tomorrow morning. But we will certainly relay some of the feedback we received today in some anecdotal concepts, but we will want that group tomorrow to kind of go through the same process that we went through. Some of the big takeaways is really just for us to obviously mode choice, big component, and certainly understand the diverse differences of what innovation means between some of these different areas. And so we'll be looking at that. We're working with CartPo and some of our stakeholders and committee members as part of this to really try to understand exactly what some of those will be. And as Augustine pointed out in the group chat, there is another workshop coming up in a couple months to focus on what innovation means and how we can apply it through any and all of these areas. So with that, I want to hand it back over to Augustine to close us
Not
out.
to me.
Oh, sorry. Back to Tyler.
Me real quick. To me, real quick. Just one slide. So right now, currently, we're showing on the website and to the public that we're in phase 2. We are right here. We are bridging the gap between analysis and moving over into solutions. And everyone on the call today and everyone that's had to drop off has been vital. I appreciate you being engaged. It's the only way that this will be successful. So just to show you real quick, I'll just go through this real fast. We're writing the vision and mobility issues. As Adam mentioned, we'll be doing some innovation brainstorming coming up. Then you'll see solutions and scenario development, then the prioritization for those. We'll be talking about innovative solutions and strategies as it relates to the funding of those, and then recommendations. And so that's where we'll be headed. And Augustine, I'll turn it over to you to close us out.
Thank you, and thank you everyone. Again, on behalf of CRTPO staff and the entire consultant team, thank you for your time. Tomorrow, if you want to participate again, you're more than welcome, but you don't have to. Your input and your feedback today is extremely important because the consultant team and CRTPO, we are the engine. We are the ones doing the work, but really you are the driver as part of the advisory and the steering committee. And the information, the insight, the feedback, the input, all of this information that you provide us is what really is going to drive the project to a successful and altogether an opportunity to give and accomplish all those goals that we are setting up as we are seeing today. So again, thank you. And we'll be here until 7 o'clock. If anybody wants to stay a little bit longer, have additional conversation. So it is 6:49. And again, if you're welcome to join us, but this meeting will start again, or this workshop will start again tomorrow morning at 8:30. Thank you.
But basically,
Thanks,
let the happy
Augustine.
hour begin is what Augustine is saying.
Thanks, Augustine and Tyler and Adam. Great job today.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.